Okay, hello everybody. I'd like to start right ahead. Raphael told me that I have to introduce myself, so let's start with that. I'm Ole Michaelis. I'm from Hamburg in Germany. You can find me on Twitter as Codestars, Nesquik on GitHub, and my blog is under codestars.eu. I'm 25 years old. I'm from Hamburg. I'm considering myself as a web nerd, backend developer, and mostly I'm on PHP and Node, and so all web stuff. I'm really into that. I'm working for Gimnu. They hired me as an open source rockstar, which is a pretty cool title, but actually it's just a normal day-to-day job, so don't worry about that too much. We're hiring, but that should be not the point here. I have to make a shameless plug, honestly, because this conference is amazing so far, what I've seen now, and Raphael is doing a great job. And a few friends of mine, we got inspired by all these awesome conferences around, and so we plan to putting up a conference in Hamburg too. So whenever you're in European area, maybe for a JSConf or something, we put up So Coded in Hamburg. It's on the 19th and 20th of September this year, and we got like awesome speakers from all over the world, GitHub, Engineer, Tydo. It will be super awesome, so join us if you're in area, and if not, come to Europe and join us for the conference. I need to make a big disclaimer, because usually this talk is made for in-deep PHP community conferences, so I tend to rant a lot about, Java, Ruby, all the other languages around, so don't take myself, or you shouldn't take me too serious. I rant a lot about this stuff, and I don't want to harm anybody, so please don't feel harmed. So the talk, what's wrong with PHP? Usually, as I mentioned, this talk is meant to be for in-deep PHP community. So for me, this is like a big adventure to present to all of you. So I want to know, who of you has ever written some lines of PHP? Okay, that's not that few. How many of you would consider yourself as a member of the PHP community? Wow, one. Amazing. Okay, this will be super fun, at least for both of us. And for the rest, hopefully too, right? So I like to tell you the story of a language nobody likes. You might experience that too. The last year, I've been to many conferences around the world. And it was not only PHP conferences, well, like here, it's pretty mixed, more web stuff, but it was like all kind of developers. And whenever we had this awesome hallway track we have here also, people asked me what I'm doing and what kind of job I have. I was like, yeah, I'm a PHP guy. And every time I mentioned that, I got a really weird response, because the people goes like, yeah, PHP, I heard that, poor boy. And this was so weird, because I experienced that, and I experienced that more than once. And we had a talk, I thought it was the second one here. There was a guy, I don't remember, he mentioned a few languages, and at last, he put his eyebrows up and said, PHP. Again, so whenever you mention PHP, it's like the people treating you in a somehow weird way. And this really bothered me. And so I come to the conclusion that PHP sucks, right? So whenever you get treated weird just because you're doing PHP, I mean, it could not be a problem if you're as a person, it must be a problem of language, right? So that was, for me, the normal conclusion. But this should not be well, that's wrong, right? You should not be treated different just because you're doing language. So this really made me think, and I take it with me, and I thought about it a lot. I spoke with people a lot about this topic, and all I got was mostly people said, yeah, these PHP guys, they're weird somehow. They don't know programming. They all do crappy programming shit. They don't know their job. And I was like, come on, man, you're talking to me. I'm a PHP guy, so we are not that wrong. So how do you think? Why is it? So I was really into the question, why is it? And I Googled along, I thought about it, and it was really hard to finding a fact that proved this. So it was really hard to prove that we as PHP people, we got treated somehow differently, right? So I Googled a lot, thinking about it, and finally I found one real number, so something I can maybe prove it. So there's open source, right? I mentioned I'm an open source rockstar, so whenever open source, fuck yeah, right? I love open source, so I'm really passionate about this. And you know, GitHub, I know we have like 2 GitHubers or maybe a few more here around, which is super awesome. And on GitHub, they've got the statistics, which are the top used languages on GitHub. And of course, JavaScript is a super awesome language on top, but PHP is on rank 6. I mean, rank 6, why? This is like super weirdo. Even Shell is above PHP. I mean, come on guys, what is Shell of a programming language, right? So at least for me, it's not a programming language. So this is a fact that shows that there must be something in the middle, and nobody like want to mention it. It's like there's an elephant in the room, and nobody treated it, right? But on the other hand, I was at Wikipedia searching for PHP and stuff, just for gathering the facts for the talk, and they mentioned that there are 20 million sites running PHP, which is a lot. But when this number is true, Jimdo owns like half of the internet, because we got 9 million pages. So the number might be wrong, but for me it sounds pretty reasonable that PHP runs 80% of the web. And that's what they're saying, and for me this sounds like really natural, because there's like WordPress around, you all might know it's the biggest blogging platform ever, and there are like tons of these small sites when you just got into development, like I want to have my own website, you mostly starting with PHP was pretty cool. And there's not only the big things around, like all the smaller scripts and stuff, we have also really big fishes. There's Facebook, of course, they run PHP. There's Yahoo, there's Wikipedia, there's WordPress, Flickr, and what most people don't know is that even the Apple homepage, it runs also on PHP. So it could not be that wrong, right? So when we have like the quantity, like 80% of the web runs on PHP, and we have like the quality, like all the big players using PHP, it could not be so wrong as we all got treated then, right? So I definitely want to check why this is, and I want to check all the facts, what's wrong there. And this really bothered me, again. So I was checking and thinking and searching the web for facts, and one day I came up at Google doing a search query for PHP sample codes. I think this is like a typical query for beginners. So whenever you want to start with programming or with PHP programming, you would do this. And I want to go with you through the results, right? The first one is W3 Schools. I mean, you might know them for the high quality content. Okay, but anyway, it's the first result, and they say a PHP file normally contains HTML text and some PHP scripting code. Below I have an example, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I want to check it. And what they got is like this. And this is super wrong, right? It's the worst PHP stuff I've ever seen. This is not the PHP I'm used to, at least me as a PHP developer, because it's like mixing all this stuff, and there's like a hello world echo, which is super useless because you could just paint it into the HTML anyway. And this is not my PHP, but it is valid, right? So every PHP compiler could render it, and there would be a HTML page with a proper output, which might be half valid for most of the validators. So I think that is the most important point here, because there are more different kinds of languages, right? So when you go, like, we had the example of Java, you have like all the boilerplate code, and so the language itself really pushes you into a way of writing code. And this is what PHP definitely not do. I think this is a big difference. And the next one is Tyzak. I don't know Tyzak, so I skipped this one completely. But the last is even more weird than the first. Because when you're searching for the sample codes, which should, for me, post your example for like how to use Symfony 2, how to use fancy frameworks, what all the cool stuff you can do with PHP. But what we got here is like, it's a third hit at Google, it's like how to write desktop applications. I mean, have you ever tried it with PHP? It's like the worst thing you can ever do, right? Don't do it ever. Really, it's completely broken. The whole GDK PHP stuff, it's broken. It will never work out well. So take one thing from here: don't do GDK with PHP. So when you want to write desktop applications, and maybe there at some point might good valid reasons for writing desktop applications, go ahead, but not with PHP. It's about choosing the right tool for the job, right? So this really makes me like this. I want to stop. I want to stop with all the research for the talk. I want to stop with all the stuff because there's so much wrong, and the people kind of prove me right. They right. So there must be something wrong, and they are right when giving me a weird smile because I'm doing PHP. So I ended up tweeting this. Okay, but giving up at this stage would be kind of stupid, right? So I continued, and I stopped for about 2 months or something. And when I was cleaning out my hard drive, I found one thing I've did like 7 years ago, and I discovered this one, right? And I think this is what the most non-PHP developers thinks of PHP. What all our code is looking like, and what maybe Facebook and Apple is looking like. But trust me, this is wrong, right? This is not what PHP developers do these times. We can do better. We know objects, and we don't do queries just one line ahead of HTML. Really. So, to be honest, this is my code. It's 7 years old. And first of all, I want to start here as this slide with a WordPress example, because their code looks basically the same, but I don't want to blame them. So I just choose my code. It's from 2008, and I learned a lot, but I think this is the problem why we always get this weird smile. Because people really think that we're doing programming in this kind of way, but this is completely wrong, but they don't know it. I think this is the whole thing, because often people had done PHP. As you've seen here, we had like 10, 12 hands up, but when it comes to the question who's still in this community, most hands goes down, and because the people left at PHP when PHP was at this stage. So when we don't had like objects, so back in the dark PHP 3 and 4 times. But with PHP 5, we do better, really trust me. And so this leads to the question, can we fix it? I think yes, we can. And it should not be that hard. And this does not only apply to PHP. Sorry. I think this applies to all of your languages, right? Maybe some of your languages are better at some points, but when you want to improve your language, you can easily do it with these steps. So 3 easy steps to fix PHP, or maybe for you, 3 easy steps to fix your language. The first step is join, participate. So join the community. So for you, it's a good thing that you're here, right? This is being part of a community. It's like the hallway track. It's chatting to all the other developers around. It's like committing to people, talking to people, and being around. This is super. Pierre Joy did a talk on the Drupal conference. He mentioned how you could contribute to PHP. It's like fixing the core, writing tests, doing documentation. So you don't have even to know C in case of PHP or also for other languages to contribute. So you can also write in documentation, for example. When you're like a good technical writer, just go and write documentation. And this one really applies to the PHP community. It's kind of bad luck that so less people from the community are here, but so maybe I can give you other people a good insight. Because what usually happens when we as a PHP community unite, we had a conference about our language. People are hating a lot. So we're hanging around, and last week I was at an unconference in Berlin, and unconference you can vote for talks, and half of the talks voted was ranting about PHP. It was like, oh, why we didn't this in the last year, or why do we still suck at this, or why don't we do it like this way. It was all the people ranting all the time, and this is like super bad. The complete opposite example is the Ruby community. The Ruby community, as at least seen from the outside, like super egocentric. You would never see a Ruby guy ranting in public about Ruby, right? Ruby is like the best language ever. You've never seen anything better. I think the truth is maybe in the middle, right? For me, it's always like choosing the right tool for the job. But what's really important is like, don't hate your language, don't rant your language, make it better, right? I know people, so humanity loves to complain about stuff, but this is bad. We should not do that. And what also fix your language is like, make it happen, right? So participate in the community or participate in open source, for example, right? I love to do open source. So when I got like a spare weekend and I've seen in my feed reader any interesting project, I'm going for writing PHP SDK, for example. Or maybe I just pick up a new language and I want to improving my Ruby skills and I'm doing something for this. But it's not, and that's what developers often tend to make, it's like putting people on a stage, like I am on a stage, but I mean more this rockstar-wise. For example, there's Dirk-Jan. Dirk-Jan is a great example, right? The guy before me. So he was on the stage, he's the guy who wrote Rubinius. So he's like a super smart guy, knowing all the internals, and this is, of course this is great. Dirk-Jan is a smart guy, but you can do that too. You should not put him on a stage. He's like people like I am, like you are. And the real heroes are not the people here giving a talk. The real heroes are you attending, right? Because you have the time to make it happen, right? And you're like fighting all day with the weird bugs in your language or bugs in any other libraries. So you're the one who could make it happen, and don't trust in anybody else make it happen, right? You should do it. You should feel the strength and you should feel encouraged to do it. This is really the point I want to make. And I have a few PHP examples. There's, for example, Composer, which is for PHP people, something like what Ruby Guys has as Gem. So we finally, it's like the end of last year, we got a package and dependency management, which is pretty cool. And we have PHP, which is a PHP compiler in PHP. And now you could question, so yeah, why do we need that? And for me, this is like the most useless project ever. You don't need it ever, at least not production-wise, but it's cool because it's like a show-off project, what you can do, right? It's not impossible to do this stuff. So it should show you that you can do it too, that you could also feel empowered enough to do this kind of things. There's also Beard, which is a PHP-based behavior testing framework. We finally have Symfony 2, which is a great framework, MVC framework, full stack, with lots of components, which is pretty cool. So the PHP community does also all these cool things like dependency injection and discovering modules more and more, and not like writing a big monolithic blob of code. And we got PHP the right way, which is like super awesome, because it shows beginners how they should start with PHP. It's about what program should I use for a web server, or what program should I use as a framework, or should I write the guestbook myself again, or maybe should just use the library. It's all about this. So it's like showing the right way, and when this one would be there, when I started with the crappy example I showed you, I think I would not do it that crappy, but maybe a bit better. And there's Behead, there's Ming, there's PHP Spec. We have PHP Unit with a great testing framework it's around for since years. We have Prophecy, which is a mocking library. I won't go into all the details of the tools because we have not that many PHP guys here. And we have WordPress. And WordPress is worth mentioning because it makes so many people dive into the language. So imagine you're like in your mid-school and you want to get started with the internet. You want to have a blog, right? Okay, your kid goes to Tumblr and stuff, but especially us as an engineer, we like to disassemble and reassemble things. So you often go to any like shared hoster and buy a vServer and setting up your blog on your own because you just want to do it. And WordPress is a great thing to start with because it's super easy to make smaller changes. When you like want to add an element in your template, you can just go to the template and edit it there. Imagine WordPress would be written in a really fancy framework and you want to do a small change. You have to understand the whole language, and you could not just go like the weak way, right? You could not just go to the file and edit it. You have to go to the controller first, maybe assign a variable, then you have to go to the corresponding template, which might be autoloaded via any magic, and you don't have to know where it lies, and all this kind of stuff. So WordPress is a great thing for getting started, even if I blame it a lot. And the third step, which is like super important again, it's like spread the word. So it's like super easy. So just step up to the people when they give you a weird smile about your language, not just PHP based. Show off that you're not like a wrong person just because you're doing this one specific language, right? You should just go and, yeah, I'm a PHP guy, and why shouldn't I? I earn good money with it, right? We have lots of cool tools, and we are just a normal programming language. But the only thing is that you can also write crappy code with it. So we are not forced to do like the good architecture and stuff. There are tons of examples doing it. Like there's Fabienne who's writing the Symfony framework, and there's Kore, there's Jordi writing the dependency management stuff, and also the organizers here, they are also doing a thing for the community. Maybe in this case it's not for a special programming language community, but Raphael does a lot for the Tel Aviv programming community as itself. So you should appreciate it. Go to him, talk to him, get him on the shoulders, like, yeah, you're doing good, and thank you for that. This is so important. And you could do it too, right? When you want to write, when you don't have a user group at your maybe local city, just go ahead and start one. Meetup makes it so easy. And you could just go with like 5 guys. It's way enough to meet regularly in a month, once in a month. And go start it. Go start a community. Because exchanging is like super important, really. And there's also good arguments for using PHP. I want to show up to you because maybe I can convince you that we are not that crappy, right? Cat content, very important, the cutest internet on the world. PHP is super, super easy for a beginner. I mentioned in the WordPress example, you can just dive into a file without all the overhead of maybe controllers, hierarchical MVC and stuff. It's super verbose, right? There's very, very less magic. So when you're writing a class, you're really writing the class, you're writing extend, you don't do any weird files. A beginner would never get what it means, right? Extend is like a word and he can guess the meaning. And when you're writing methods, you write public function. So it's really, it's like verbose, it's saying what it's done. And we have very less magic. And again, there's open source, fuck yeah! So GitHub annually mails result overview stuff. And PHP is like also in it. So we got place 5 and 6 because we got like tons of frameworks, right? So we got Symfony and Zen framework, and when these both maybe unite, we can maybe compete with Rails, hopefully. At least, so we got some open source stuff, right? So we're not like doing only crappy shit. That's the thing I want to make. And open source can make it happen, and only source is like a pretty powerful tool. Right? So imagine you want to have an HTTP client. Everybody, especially these days, needs an HTTP client. And for going with that, what most PHP beginners tend to do is like writing their own, doing some curl magic and then going ahead. And they support a GET request. But this is like super bad. Doing it the open source way means you're picking one of the existing libraries, which is hopefully open source, and when it's missing a feature, you can just add it, and then you contribute back, which is super important, because other people do so too, and maybe they do the work for you. Maybe they are implementing a feature you would need in a month. You never know. And that's why it's so important that we all commit to open source. And PHP is also more than web. You can... Okay, I'll hurry up a bit. You can like write super easy daemons and shell scripts and stuff. We have tons of libraries. And I want to make this closing remark. There was this ranting post, maybe you all know it, a fractal of bad design. There was a guy ranting against PHP very hardly. And then there's Fabienne. He writes the Symfony framework. And he wrote a counter post. It's linked on the slides. I'll share later. And he mentioned PHP is probably not the best language out there, but PHP is the best web platform ever. And I really appreciate that, and I think it's kind of true. So thank you very much, and time for questions.